Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera buat kita semuanya. Selamat siang pada Bapak Ibu, teman-teman. Terima kasih sudah bergabung dengan acara kuliah umum ini atau public lecture ya, yang akan dibawakan oleh Dr. Mohammed Batineh mengenai CAT tools dan machine translation. Saya akan menjadi moderator untuk acara ini. Mohon izin nanti akan berbicara bahasa Inggris mungkin sampai akhir karena Batineh tidak mengerti bahasa Indonesia. Nanti pertanyaan kalau bisa ditanyakan dalam bahasa Inggris lebih baik. Kalau ada yang tidak bisa boleh ditanyakan dalam bahasa Indonesia. Nanti kami bantu menerjemahkannya atau mengalih bahasakannya ke dalam bahasa Inggris. Okay, without further ado, let me start this public lecture by reading the short biodata of Mohammed Al-Batineh. So Mohammed Al-Batineh is an associate professor of translation at the Department of Translation at Yarmouk University. He obtained his PhD in translation studies from Kent State University, USA. Mohammed also holds a master's in English Arabic translation from Yarmouk University, where he completed his undergraduate studies in English language and literature. He has worked extensively in the area of translator and interpreter training. Since 2018, Mohammed has been working as a content expert for online translation technologies and localization courses in different higher education institutions in the US, Europe, and Arab world. His research interests involve corpus linguistics, computer-aided translation or CAT, video game localization, and translation pedagogy. Okay, so that's the short biodata of Mohammed Al-Batineh. To Mohammed, I give you the floor.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to talk about CAT tools, technology, and machine translation, the topic that I love always to talk about. And as you mentioned, it's one of the areas of research that I am interested in. I would like to thank the dean, the faculty members, and the president of your university for leading these initiatives. Thank you again for having me today to talk about, again, the topic that I love with people interested in translation and technology. So my presentation today is going to be a light, interactive presentation or lecture. I'm going to ask you certain questions about your experience and about your views on translation and technology. So it's going to be light, it's going to be interactive, and inshallah, we will learn so much. Dr. Haru introduced me. Thank you for the introduction. Our agenda for today are going to be, or it's going to include an overview of the language industry. We're going to talk about trends in the translation market and in the language industry in general. After that, we will move and talk about CAT tools and a concept called the translation environment tools. In that particular part, we're going to cover two things. The first one is translation memory systems and terminology management systems, and how translators use machine translation memory and terminology management to produce high quality translation. After I provide the theoretical background, the theoretical overview of translation technologies, I'm going to do a live demo. I'm going to show you how translation environment tools work and how translators utilize translation memory and term bases in their projects. In the second part of the presentation, I'm going to move and talk about machine translation, the thing that everybody knows and some of us don't like, others usually use in their daily lives as translators and as internet users. And if we have enough time, we will do a live demo on how translators use machine translation in their daily lives as producers of content and translators of content. The session will end by providing important resources for translation students and for professional translators on how to develop yourself as a translator in the translation market, how to start working on your CV and build your CV to enter the translation market in the right way. Of course, this particular session part, which is this resources part, will also include information about post-editing and how to become a certified post-editor. Let's talk about the language industry. And as you know, the internet and the advancements in technologies opened the world for industries to open in different parts of the world. So as you can see, like different agencies or different companies in Indonesia opened in Jordan, or in the States opened in Japan, and vice versa. So technology is driving this force. However, the only thing that would help companies to move from one country to another or from one culture to another is basically translation. And this fact produced what we call outsourcing of translation services. So companies nowadays, for example, let's take Apple as an example. So if Apple wants to open a branch in Jordan or a branch in Indonesia, they have to translate their content into Indonesian language. So they started to hire people from Indonesia to work on these tasks. So they send their translation and localization needs to Indonesian people to work on them. So this what created what we call decentralized translation market. So people in Indonesia can work for a company in the States, or for a company in Jordan, or even a Jordanian person can work for a company in Japan. So this fact makes it really interesting for translators, because they are not or no longer determined, and they don't have to stay in one specific country in order to work as translators. They can work for any company in the world as long as they know how to use certain technologies. So the increasing economic importance of translation manifested in globalization, SIMship, which is simultaneous shipment, and localization, plus the technological advances in the field of translation technology has created a new set of skills and shifted the traditional role and duties of translators. So translators nowadays, they have to tweak a little bit their skills. They have to acquire certain skills in order to survive in the translation market. So basically, this has imposed a challenge or imposed a certain kind of force on not only on translators, but also on translation training programs to train students to be successful in their future career. Let's talk about some of the trends in today's translation market. What I mean by trends is that I'm going to talk about the types of tasks that are required by today's translation market. So it has been found that medical translation, technical translation, financial translation, and legal translation are the main required subject field translation skills that are asked by today's translation market. And more importantly, about 50% of job ads in the translation market require knowledge in computer-aided translation. So this means that if you have this knowledge, you are at advantage. I mean, you have the advantage to get more jobs if you know computer-aided translation technologies. So basically, the market is asking for translators who are skilled at using technology, and companies are looking for translators who can work cheaply. And what I mean by cheaply here is not cheap money. Cheaply means, in this context, cheap compared to the money that the company will get. For example, certain companies will gain so much money from translating their products into other languages. So in one of the recent surveys and statistics, it has been found out that Microsoft made billions of dollars from their localized products, translated products. And translators are the ones who help Microsoft to get the money. So, for example, if Microsoft paid 1 million for translators in order to gain the $1 billion, that's still cheap for Microsoft. This is what I mean by cheaply. So translators are turning to technology, and companies are turning to technology for assistance because of the explosion of content. We have an explosion of content. We have so many things created every single day online, and there's no way to translate them without the use of technology, or it would be very difficult for us. Nowadays, familiarity with CAT tool technology or machine translation even became a prerequisite for translators if they want to meet the current and the future demands of the translation industry. I tried to look at the Indonesian translation market, or at the current trends or the required skills in the Indonesian translation market. And I discovered that there is a huge call for software localizers. Software localizers, they work on translating or adapting a software product into a specific target language and culture. Another important thing that I also found is that mobile app localization or translation is another important trend in the Indonesian translation market. And Indonesia is the 7th largest mobile app market worldwide by share of installs. So it's a huge market, not only in Indonesia, but worldwide. Game localization is also another trend, and it has been found that Indonesia is one of the biggest consumers of games. And they reported, one of the technology websites that is interested in conducting surveys and studies on translation markets and markets in different parts of the world, they say on a global scale, Indonesia claims the 17th or 17th position with its gaming market, which commands an estimate of about $1.1 billion revenues as recorded in January 2019. So it's a huge market, like 1.1 billion. Part of this would go to translators who know how to localize and how to translate video games. Another important trend is the explosion of audiovisual material online. And as you can see, iFlix and Netflix, I'm not sure about Netflix, but iFlix is available in Indonesia, and they provide Indonesian subtitles for their audience. So we can think also about the way the task of the translator has been shifted. Nowadays, the translation market in Indonesia is asking for people who can work with different text type, with different file formats. So with that in mind, again, we can translate a game, we can translate a website, we can translate an audiovisual material without the use of technology. Because again, we cannot use a Microsoft Word document to translate a video, right? We can't use Microsoft Word document to translate a game, right? Of course, it's not only about those kind of products, it also includes other types of text, such as legal contracts, medical documents, technical documents, and the use of translation technologies is almost inevitable and is almost crucial and important in these kind of domains. So let's start now by talking about computer-aided translation, what it means, why you think that we should use them, and how can we start working on them. But before we talk about this, I want you to take a minute and go to this website. It's menti.com, and there is a code. This is the code for menti.com. Go to Menti and use this code. There will be a question to answer. You have only 1 minute to answer the question. So again, go to menti.com and answer this question, please. I'm going to display the results after you answer the question, or two questions, basically. So the first question says the following. Machine translation and CAT tools are the same. Yes, no, I'm not sure. Excellent. So it seems that people, again, we only have 1 minute for this particular question. Okay. Wonderful. It seems we have things to learn today. This is great. I'm going to show you the result in 1 minute, but let me show you and start the other question. You can start answering the second question on the same code. Just try to answer the second question. The second question asks and says, I have never used CAT tools, or you have previously used it, or this is your first time to hear about CAT tools.
Wow, it seems that a lot of people have used CAT tools.
Excellent, yes. This is great.
Sonia, have you muted everybody else?
Okay, amazing. This is great. Thank you for being so interactive. So it seems that we have two things to talk about. Let's talk about the first thing, which is about the first question. And it seems that you know that machine translation and CAT tools are different. So this was the majority. They answered that they don't believe that they are the same. Excellent. 9% of those who answered the question, or 8%, they think they are the same, while 19% they don't know. This is great. So as for the second question, it seems that 44% have already used it, while about 56% either never used it or they wanted to learn about CAT tools. And this basically based on about 100 answers. This is great. So at least we have things to learn today. Hala, before I start talking about CAT tools and main components of a CAT tool, let me provide this important piece of information that says CAT tool is a broader term and covers every tool that helps the work of translators in any way, such as translation memory systems, terminology management, corpus analysis, spell checkers, dictionaries, and grammatical aid. Hala, scholars say these are CAT tools because they aid and they help translators to produce their tasks. And at this point, we have to distinguish between CAT tools and the translation environment tools. When we say translation environment tools, we mean tools that are used specifically to produce translations. Tamam? So again, CAT tools, they are a broad term. Nowadays, scholars say we have to concentrate on the tools that translators use to produce translations, to type in their translations and to use them. So in translation environment tools, we have two things: translation memory and terminology management system. We're going to talk about this later in the slides. Back to the first part of the question that says, have you ever used the CAT tool? And I want to make a distinction, and I want to highlight that CAT tools are completely different from machine translation. Now, machine translation is an automatic translation where the user can use it to translate text from one language into another automatically. While a CAT tool is a tool that translators use to help him or her produce translations. So in CAT tools, humans translate, while in machine translation, we have the machine or the system does the whole task. Back to translation environment tools. Translation environment tools are tools that have translation memory as a central component. So focus on the first term, which is translation memory. And the second component is a terminology tool or a term base. So why do I have to care? Why do you think that we should learn this kind of technology? Now we have two simple reasons. Number one, in a nutshell, in order to work as a translator in the translation industry. This doesn't mean that you will not work as a translator if you don't know CAT tools, but it means that if you know CAT tools, this would give you what? Pluses in your CV. That would help you gain more jobs. And number two, CAT tools are becoming became an integral part of translation curriculum. We are teaching them at universities, and that's why we have to basically cover them and learn them. Back to the components of CAT tools. This is the core part of the presentation or the lecture. So in CAT tools, we have two important things, and we have to focus on these two things. Number one, we have translation memory. It is a type of database that stores your translations and would help you reuse them in the future. So translation memory saves translations, segments of translations, sentences. While the second component is what we call a term base. And in this part, term base are used to store terms and their translations in the target language. If we talk about a translation memory is a linguistic database where we store segments. What I mean by segments could be a sentence, a phrase, a header, a footer, or a table cell. Again, so whenever something that is translated using a CAT tool, this part or this sentence is stored in the translation memory. Why? To be used in future translation projects, and this is what we call recycling your translation. I'm going to show you now the component of the translation memory, the main things in the translation memory, and how to call them. The first thing that we have in a translation memory is what we call source text segment. It is the source text sentence or a source text phrase. Then we have the target text segment, which is basically the translation of this segment, which is in the source language. Both segments are called translation unit. So these are some of the terms that we should understand. How does a translation memory work? So translation memory is part and a component in a translation environment tool. When the translator is trying to translate a specific sentence, for example, if we have this sentence here, the translation memory component automatically searches for similar sentences that the translator has previously translated. And if a match is found, the translation memory component would list the previous translation on the screen for the translator to consult. For example, this sentence or a similar one, this sentence is the sentence that the translator is trying to translate. The translation memory goes and compares and looks for similar sentences that the translator previously translated in a previous occasion. After that, a suggestion is displayed here with a percentage. I mean, what you see here is basically a percentage of match. Cool. So this percentage of match basically tells you that the sentence that you are working on is, for example, 99% similar to another one that you have previously translated, or 77% similar to a sentence that you have already translated. So you don't have to translate the whole sentence again. So the translator basically clicks on the suggestion and edits the suggestion if an edit is required. And I'm going to show you that when I have the live demo. So as I mentioned, we have matches here, a percentage of match, and you have to understand different types of match and what they mean. Now I'm providing like theoretical information on translation memory because I expect like some students might be interested in conducting research on translation technologies. And they have to know how to call things, and they have to know what to start or where to start and what to search for when they want to read and further understand the concepts. So the concept of match is basically the percentage of similarity between the translation that the translator is working on and previous translations that he or she produced in a previous occasion. We have three different types of match that we should understand. Number one is the exact match. Exact match is basically 100% identical translation that has been previously translated and 100% similar to the one that the translator is working on. Number two, we have a full match. A full match is similar but not identical. Cool? So there are minimal differences between the sentence that the translator is translating and the one that he previously translated in a previous occasion. While the third type of match is what we call a fuzzy match. And this fuzzy match is basically approximation. It is similar to the one that the translator is working on, but it's not identical. And the percentage varies from 65 to 98%. For example, this is the sentence and it shows the percentage here. And the good thing about translation memory, it highlights the differences between the sentence that the translator is trying to translate and the sentence that is stored in the translation memory. For example, look at this sentence here. It says click and it deletes OK, adds save to save your current project or cancel to exit. This is a segment that the translator is working on. And the system is basically telling the translator that, wait a minute, you have previously translated a similar sentence. And the only difference between the sentence that you're working on and the sentence that you have already translated is in the following. Delete the word OK and provide a translation for the word save. So in this context, on this occasion, the translator has to translate only one word, which basically saves his time. This is what translation memory. Now I'm going to move and talk about terminology management and term bases. Terminology management is a very important concept in translation. And in not only translation, the theoretical part of translation, but also the practical part of translation. So what is terminology management? It's basically either a set of terms. We call a set of terms in a specialized area. For example, we have legal terminology. We call them terminology. Or it's an academic or professional discipline that concerns itself with managing terms and terminology for different purposes. When it comes to translation practice, terminology management is a set of activities carried out to ensure that terms are used consistently and are translated consistently by translators. So this involves the following. Number one, collecting terms in a specific domain and storing them in a term base. Number two, identifying and eliminating inconsistencies. Because sometimes we have one term that could be translated in different ways in the target language. In order to improve the quality of your document, only one translation should be used and consistently in your translation. So translation tools, and more specifically, terminology tools, would help you impose restrictions on the use of terminology. And I'm going to show you that when I do the live demo. Unfortunately, and as you know, inconsistent terminology in your translation will hinder communication. This is number one. It would create confusion and, of course, would damage the company's image, and sometimes it would result in legal issues. So it is sometimes very serious, especially if you work on legal translation or medical translation. The use of terminology is a crucial part in these kind of texts, and you have to pay particular attention not only to the accurate transfer of terms, but also to the consistent use of of terminology. So it's right the opposite. If you manage terminology, this would help you improve the quality of your translation. It would reduce translation costs and would shorten turnaround times for translation. What do I mean by this? For example, if you manage terminology and you translate, then before you start working on the translation project, this would help you do two things. Number one, it would help you provide a good translation. This would reduce time spent on review, right? So which means less money to pay for reviewers, right? And of course, less time to release your translation to the market if you're working on a document that will be released to customers. Okay, again, a term base is used to basically store terms and their translation, while a translation memory is used to store translations, longer chunks of language. The term base in a translation environment tool works as an automatic dictionary. What I mean by automatic dictionary is the following. Now, while the translator is working on a specific segment to translate, the term-based component compares the words included and the terms included in the sentence that he is working on, or the translator is working on, against the terms that are stored in the term base. And if a match is found, the terms will be displayed for translators to translate and to use. For example, here in Arabic we have صافي وفرات الحكومة النفقات التشغيلية, etc., etc. So as you can see, several terms are stored in the term base, and the system automatically looks for the matches and displays them here. So it saves your time, because if you find a specific term that's difficult to translate, you look up the meaning in dictionaries, specialized dictionaries, you ask professional people to provide help, and you come up with a translation, or you basically conclude your search with a specific translation. If you save that in your term base, every time you face that term in your translation, it will be displayed for you to use and to basically consult. Again, we have translation memory, we have term base, but how do translators in the translation market utilize these two technologies? The first thing in any translation project, and I'm taking the market-oriented project workflow. In the market, we start with what we call document preparation. We take a look at the document that I want to translate. I make sure that it is fine and it can be used in a CAT tool or in a translation environment tool. What I mean here is that my computer-aided translation technologies will be able to read the text. For example, sometimes you get a text that is scanned, right? And you cannot copy or paste the text. your CAT tool will not be able to read the content of the scanned documents. So you have to do something in order to convert this document into a machine readable format that will be read by your translation tool. After that, we have what we call terminology extraction. So you read the text, you extract terminology, and then after that, you translate the terms. And this can be done by a translator or by a terminologist. So we have 3 steps, and we have not started translation action yet, right? Fourth step is document translation, which is usually done by a translator. Again, terminology management is basically a crucial part of the translation project workflow. The question is, when should we use translation environment tools? You talked about translation memory, you talked about term bases, but is there a kind of, rule that would help me think about my translation projects and whether I need a translation environment tool to use or not? So it has been found that translation environment tools are excellent in the following situations. Number 1, when I have a text that includes repetitions, such as legal texts. We have repetitions sometimes, especially in contracts, such as technical texts, manuals. Number 2, when I have a text with fixed terminology. What I mean by fixed terminology, a term that should be translated in one specific way. Cool? Let's take, for example, airports. In airports, we have the word customs, right? Customs, in English, it means a place where people go and check their luggage and to make sure that they have everything is legal in the luggage that they carry, or they have to pay a certain amount of money because they imported certain things to the country. On the other hand, we have the same exact word that has a general meaning, customs, which is related to culture, right? In the third situation, we use it when we have fixed phraseology, when we have fixed phrases that are used in a specific text. Now I'm going to show you a live demo of the things that I covered and show you how translation memory and term base work together in a translation environment tool. Okay. So for this particular task, I'm going to use a tool that's called MemSource. It's an online translation environment tool that translators use in order to translate documents from language into another. And the tool also includes translation memory and term-based function. You can create an account for free and you can start using the tool if you are interested in replicating the thing that I'm going to show you now.
It's a cute cat.
I'm going to share my screen once I open the system, so just bear with me. Okay, so let me just drag my other browser here. Are you able to see my screen now? Without the cat?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Wonderful. So this is basically a cloud-based CAT tool or a cloud-based translation environment tool that includes number 1, projects plus translation memory component and a term base. What I'm trying to translate is the following. I'm trying to translate this document, which is part of a legal contract, includes about 6 or 7 items. What I did, I went through the text and I tried to extract difficult terms. And then after I extracted the terms, I translated them into Arabic, as you can see. Drawing, utilize, apartment, some of them should not be included. I mean, it depends on the translator. He decides what to include and what not to include. So I uploaded this file to my translation environment tool, which is MemSource. And after that, I inserted my terms inside my term base. After doing so, you start translating your text. Let me show you. So as you can see, my term base compares the content of the segment that I'm trying to translate against the things that are stored in the term base. And if a match is found, the term is displayed here. For example, I have the following segment that says preliminary sale contract, and it shows contract means so and so, and don't use any other equivalents. So it manages the way you use terms. So I'm going to translate it quickly. Now I translate the segment and I click here, or there's a shortcut on the keyboard that you can do. If I click here, it means save my translation in my term base, in my translation memory. So this would help me if I face a similar segment in any future project, or even in the same project, I don't have to translate it again. Article 1 could mean البند الأول first. As you can see, I started getting other translation for the terms that I have in the segment. I don't have to go and look them up. The second party has the contractual rights to enjoy. Etc. I'm not going to translate everything. So once you're done with this segment, you confirm, you save it. The fourth segment says that the first party acknowledges that the sold unit is free from any personal rights. يقر الأول بأن Okay, so again, I translate this segment and I confirm the translation. And it seems that I have a similar sentence here. I'm going to jump to this one. So this sentence says the first party acknowledges that the sold unit is free from any personal rights. And another segment says the first party acknowledges that the sold unit is free from any real estate rights. So I don't have to translate this again. As you can see, the translation memory automatically checks my previous translations and it tells me, wait a minute, you have a sentence that you have previously translated and it says so and so, and below it shows the differences between the sentence that I'm trying to translate and the one that I have already translated and stored in my translation memory. So I basically double click this sentence and I change the things that are here. So I have to remove personal, which means شخصي, and add the equivalent of real estate, أي حقوق, and I confirm my segment and I'm good to go. So basically I only translated one word because I have already translated a similar sentence in my previous translations. Let's do another sentence, and then we're going to move to the second part. See? Okay, look at this. So it automatically checks the translation and inserts it here. It says, wait a minute, you have translated something similar to this. However, this sentence says second party. It doesn't say first party. So delete the word first in the target language and add second in the source. And you have to delete real estate rights into damage or imperfections. So basically you apply that. So instead of saying the first party, it should be the second party. And I have, of course, the term base working perfectly. So we're good. As you can see, this what I mean by translation memory and term base. And I showed you how a CAT tool would help me, number one, save terms and use them in my translation. I don't have to check dictionaries in order to translate terminology. And number two, I will be using terms consistently every time they appear because the translation term-based component provides translations for the terms. It's always great when you work with a team of translators to manage terminology because everybody has his own way of translating things. So it's always great to share translation memory and to share term base in order to produce a consistent translation. And you, of course, can do that using translation technologies and online platforms or translation platforms. Now I want you to take another question. Okay, that's it for CAT tools and translation environment tools. Now I'm going to talk about machine translation for a little bit, but before we do so, I want you to go to menti.com and use the following code. The question asks a piece of instruction. Cool. We have 5 steps. Read them in Indonesian. I don't understand Indonesian, but I did my best to include localized examples. So again, read the example here and then go to menti.com and use this code. It asks about your opinion related to this particular example. Again, we have only 1 minute to do this, unfortunately, because we are running out of time. If the question is not open yet, I'm going to open it in a minute, in a second. Yeah, the question is open. You can just go insert the code and you'll be able to answer the question. Again, just to recruit more participants, go to menti.com and insert this code. You will have a question that is about the instructions in front of you. Try to answer it. Seems that we have hard judge today, judges. Okay, I want you to think about the following question as well. Do you think that the instructions provided here provide enough information for the user to do the task? And this should be basically taken into consideration when you answer the question. For those who have not answered, or if you want to change your mind, do you think that the instructions in front of you are enough for the user to execute the task? You can use the chat box as well if you want to participate and if you have already answered. I can see that people are asking questions in the chat box. I would greatly appreciate it if you can just keep them till the end of the session. Unfortunately, I can't follow the questions now. I'll inshallah answer most of the questions by the end of the session. Okay, so let's see the results. It seems that 31% of you believe that it reads fine with no issues. So they're fine with the instructions. 53, almost half, read fine with minor issues. So basically, about 80% believe that it is okay, at least, right? And it provides information that we can basically use. This is great. What I want you to think now is that, do you think that this translation is produced by a machine or by a human translator? Do you think that this translation was done by a machine or by a human translator? Definitely machine. It was done by a machine. Excellent. So we agree on this. I mentioned in the abstract for the presentation that big and giant companies in the world are using machine translation to provide translations for their content. And Microsoft is doing this. And they publicly acknowledge that they are using machine translation in order to produce translation for their content. So again, this will start our session, which is why, or start this part of the session, which is why do translation, or why do companies use machine translation? They basically use them to provide information in certain languages or in several languages that would be impossible for them to hire enough translators to provide translation for these languages and for the specific content. Okay, so what is machine translation? Machine translation, again, is the automated translation that uses software to translate text from one natural language to another. This is the important part that I want to highlight today. It allows companies to deliver high quality translation. What I mean by high quality here is that it is high quality in terms of instruction. So sometimes it provides enough information for the user to do a specific task or to reach a specific piece of information. So high quality does not mean eloquent style, does not mean perfect language in the target. It doesn't mean style that is literal style. Cool? So what we mean in the translation industry by high quality is publishability quality, or a quality that would help the company pass the message to the audience or to the reader. So basically, it speeds the translation task. That is 100% true, because you will have instant translation for certain parts of certain websites, and of course at lower cost. And sometimes it's free. And I can tell that most of us, if it's not everybody in this session, have already used machine translation. So this is machine translation is becoming a trend in the translation industry. Now I want you to make sure that machine translation will never replace human translators. Trust me. A human intervention will always be needed, either to correct the machine translation output or to pre-edit or train the machine translation system. But the question here is, okay, why or what should we do? We basically should think about machine translation as something that is coming in the future. And we should think about it as not as a challenge for translators and it's going to take your job. No, it's going to take the jobs of the translators who don't know how to use machine translation. However, people or translators will be asked in the future to start working with machine translation to fix the output of machine translation in order to basically execute more translation tasks. 3/4 of people publicly and acknowledge, and they say that they use machine translation. That's 1/3 of the planet, or of those who use the internet. And about more than 90% of internet users who do not understand English, they use machine translation to understand English websites and to be able to use them. Okay, what are the benefits of machine translation? As you know, lower cost, it's fast time to market. In the case of Microsoft, instead of hiring a team of translators, an army of translators to translate the content that Microsoft produces, they can rely on their machine translation to create and to translate text and to produce what we call publishability quality. We, of course, have higher volumes for translation, and they will be able to translate almost everything that they have, as long as the quality is acceptable. This would help them handle what we call content explosion. The question is, what are the benefits for translators? It's definitely a new skill that translators should learn. The skill is not machine translation per se, it is post-editing, how to fix machine translation, which is covered in the coming slides. It would give you a competitive edge. How is that? Sometimes, and I don't have time to show you, I can provide information later on, there are so many jobs in the translation market asking for translators to fix translation or machine translation. And they have to be able to do this by developing this specific competence. So if you know how to work with machine translation output, you'll be able to apply for these kind of jobs, and they will test you on this. And of course, if you have a certificate on this, would be even better. Yes, it would help them do their task faster, and they will basically help them produce more content and would help them make more money. Are machine translation systems all the same? No, they're not. They're not. We have several types. I'm not going to talk about them, but I'm going to mention them. We have the first thing that was invented decades ago that's called rule-based machine translation system, and then we have statistical machine translation systems. We also have a hybrid that combines rule-based and statistical machine translation. And nowadays, recently, they invented what we call neural machine translation that relies on sophisticated algorithms to translate. I talked about machine translation and post-editing. What we care about as translation students and as translators is the second part, which is post-editing. Post-editing is basically fixing machine translation output and bring it closer to human standards, human translation standards. So it's not perfect translation. It is close to a human translation. It's close to the quality of a human translation. And we're not talking about exceptionally professional translators. We're talking about acceptable translation that would pass the message. Hello, one important thing to consider and to think about is the skills that you should need or you should acquire in order to develop yourself as a post-editor. Hello, scholars say post-editing is a completely different process than carrying out a fully human translation from scratch. That's why they say that translators should train themselves and they should receive training in post-editing. And this is something available online. It's available sometimes for free. And the person who works as a post-editor is called, and the person who post-edits machine translation is called a post-editor. Again, let's talk about the explosion of content and why we need post-editing and why machine translation is not going to replace us. So basically, 80% of consumers feel that having pre-purchase information in their own language is important for them to buy a service. So companies are forced to localize their material. So in certain occasions, we have millions of words produced by a specific company, especially if we're talking about help files. And there's no way, it would be very unprofitable to translate it using human translators. If you translate, for example, 1 million words that are attached to a specific software that would help translate people to use the software, it would cost you so much to translate them using human translators. That's why companies are using machine translation in order to provide this kind of translation. More importantly, we have what we call explosion of content. IBM estimates that 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are created every single day. So this is what big data is. This is huge. And on average, companies translate this content into 11 languages. This is according to SDL survey. We have about 25 quintillion bytes of data that needs to be translated into 11 languages. We need another planet of translators to handle this explosion of content, and that's why we need machine translation in order to produce this translation for this content. The question that comes into your mind: what makes a good post-editor? So you have to have excellent linguistic skills, of course, in the source and in the target. You have to have domain and subject field knowledge. For example, if you translate manuals for Microsoft, you have to be able to produce or to evaluate machine translation of technical text or help files. More importantly, you have to have excellent knowledge in CAT tools. Why? Because translators work within a CAT tool environment to post-edit machine translation. I'm going to show you that in a minute. You have to have a positive attitude toward machine translation. If you have a negative attitude, it would make your life miserable. Trust me, because I had that attitude. I said, I used to say that I'm not going to work on post-editing tasks. I'm not going to use machine translation to post-edit. That was difficult for me because I always had that negative impression about the output of machine translation until I discovered that it's doing fine and we can basically work with that. Lastly, you have to practice post-editing as much as you can. Good. I'm going to provide more information about post-editing and certification after I provide this demonstration of post-editing and CAD tools. I showed you the translation of this particular contract using translation environment tool. Now I'm going to translate it using machine translation, and I'm going to show you how machine translation is implemented in a translation environment tool. Just give me 1 second.
Excuse me, Mohammed, will this still take a long time?
No, it's going to take a minute or two.
Oh, okay, because it's already 3 p.m. We're gonna have like Q&A sessions, right?
Right. So I thought that I can skip that part and provide like a video on that part if you think it would help you manage this, or I can basically just provide a quick demo. Just let me show them like quickly what I mean by post editing in a translation environment tool.
Okay.
Okay, so basically I turned on machine translation in the same project that I was working on, and I will have 3 types of suggestions. You can see my screen now, right?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, cool. So basically, I turned on my machine translation here. It shows that I have a TM, a TB, and machine translation. If I want to translate this particular sentence, for example, the machine translation would provide translation here and would provide it as a fuzzy match, as you can see. Basically, translators double-click this and reads the source segment. For example, it says يضمن الطرف الأول عدم قيام أي طرف ثالث بالطعن قانونيا, and you start fixing the translation. Okay. So basically, you can sometimes get excellent translations and you only have to change a word or two. The last thing that I want to say is that when you fix machine translation output, you have to provide the translation company with a report related to the types or the type of errors that the machine translation commit in order for them to develop their machine translation. I can provide further information maybe later on. The last thing, which is the resources, I'm going to send Dr. Haru and the other professors these 2 things. The first one is the complete guide to freelance translation. It would help you develop as a freelance translator. And the second part is training guide to post-editing certificate. We have SDL, one of the leading companies in translation technologies. They offer post-editing certificate, and they have a material for that to study. And of course, you can take the exam and become certified in machine translation. The exam used to cost $60, but now it's open for free. Anyone can log in, create an account, study the course, and take the exam and become certified in machine translation. That's it. Well, thank you so much. And the floor is now open for questions and maybe comments. Thank you again, Dr. Haru. The floor is yours. You can basically start the QA session.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Mohammed Batineh. It's raining very heavily here in Depok, maybe in some part of Indonesia. So some people have problems with their connections, so they cannot join us anymore. Okay, anyway, so thank you for that interesting explanations on CAT tools and machine translation. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions from the participants. But before we open the floor for the participant to ask the question, let's see the questions in the chat. Okay.
Start.
Okay, let's see. Okay, there's one person asking, how can I get and use the tool? Somebody already answered it. Of course, we have to buy it, but you can also find some of the free tools, I'm sure.
Let me say something in this regard.
Yeah, sure.
Most of the companies, and let me mention MemSource, it's a cloud-based tool. They provide free license for
MemSource, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
I have connection there, and they help. I mean, I can help you obtain a free license for your school. They provide education license for schools, and you can obtain that license and you can use it in your classes as a professor. But for students, you have to, you have to add them to the system. That one thing. The other thing is they can create a free account. Just let me explain this, because they have different types of accounts, and I believe this would be very helpful for the attendees to see. Let me just show you what I mean. Again, if you go to MemSource and you click free trial, there are several types of licenses. You scroll down, don't get this one. You have to get the personal free account, which is this one. It will last forever, but it would give you 2 projects only. And what students usually do after finishing a specific project, they just delete it, or they keep the files on their computers in order to start a new project and keep it on the cloud on MemSource. So again, you have to go and create personal free account that would help you use the tool for free. The second thing, Omega T, not Omega T, it is MemoQ. It's another big and giant CAD tools company. It's just like SDL. They also offer free education licenses for schools. So if your school apply for this kind of tools, you can obtain them for free to an extent.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Mohammed. Another question is someone asking, what do you think is the best CAD tool?
The one that is cheap or free and can do the task for you. So it depends on the project that you are working on. For me, SDL is the best. However, it is expensive. It would cost on Black Friday sale $400 and expensive for some translators and almost for all students. It depends on the volume of translation. It depends on the type of project that you are working on. I would suggest MemSource, free account for students to work on translation tasks. If you like it, you can buy the license, or you can even get a desktop tool such as SDL Trados or MemoQ. Yep. What else?
Okay, sorry. I also have problem with the signals. It's on and off because of the heavy rain.
No problem.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, I think you have answered the questions of the differences between machine translation and
Okay. I'll take the lead and maybe go over the questions in the chat. So Noor says, I had experience in PE project. I was asked to edit hundreds of sentences with verse fields. It was challenging.
Sorry, sorry, Muhammad.
Yeah.
It was on and off for me again.
Right. Yeah, it is challenging sometimes, especially for some languages, the output of machine translation is not excellent because of the lack of resources for machine translation to learn the language. That is the case in Arabic and maybe Indonesian, I believe. But when it comes to European languages, it's a little bit different. Mohammed says, what is your opinion about neural machine translation? What the quality of translation text, specifically several types of text required. Well, the neural machine translation is doing a great job, trust me. In specific languages, you cannot even notice that the translation was done by a machine. And when we talk about machine translation, we have to understand that we have two different types of machine translation: paid machine translation, free machine translation. The paid ones are trained and they provide excellent translation in certain domains. Cool. So it's not only about Google Translate. It's not only about Bing Translator. Yeah. I have one question. The company that I am working for currently.
Dr. Mohammed, I think you can go on the chat room and just answer it. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So Fauzi says the company that he's working on does not allow him to use CAT tools because of the limited budget. Sensitive client data. So well, to be honest, this is one of the challenging that face translators. If you work with confidential data, I would not encourage you to use any cloud-based translation technology because you can't guarantee the security in these platforms. They are secure, however, they can be hacked anytime, and all of your data can be lost, and they lost or either distributed, and this would impact your career as a translator. You can download some open source CAT tools and use them on your desktop. For example, you have Omega T, right? Just write it down and check if they have an open free software by Omega T. Just Google Omega T and see if they still provide a free license to use their software. I want to ask regarding the modification of machine FTM in the SDL Trados, how to apply and revise translation results.
So you are responding a question from Nuroshida, I think.
Yes, Nuroshida.
Okay, sure.
I want to ask regarding the modification of translation memory in SDL Trados, how to apply the revised translation result, which already 100% distributed by translation memory, and apply it in the translation currently. Yes, SDL is a different story. You can do that by opening your translation memory using the translation memory component in SDL Studio. You look for the translation memory that you want to replace. I hope I understand your question correctly. You either edit the translation and save it. That would help you eliminate duplicates. Just edit the segment and you can do that easily in the translation memory section. It would be in the lower part of the screen on your left-hand side, in the lower part of your screen, there would be translation memory component. Click on it, open your translation memory, and you'll be able to search and open the segments included in your translation memory. Just open it and edit it there. What translation memory does, it saves your previous translations. It also does not replace the ones that you already translated. It adds to the translation memory another segment and another translation of the same exact segment. So to avoid this, you can just go and double check that in your translation memory component and maybe edit that there. I hope this answers your question.
Okay, so in the audience, is there anyone who wants to ask question to Dr. Mohammed directly?
I can answer Fatima's question. She says, I wonder what kind of errors that are usually found when using CAD tools and how to overcome. There will be so many problems. Again, it depends on the type of text that you are working on. Sometimes translators rely blindly on the suggestions of the translation memory. And the translation memory includes the problems. So they will be replicating the error. This is one of the challenges, see? And it's really great if you can do research to find out the potential problems and challenges that would face translators when they work using CAD tools. And you can even manipulate your data. You can provide translators with good translations, bad translation, and see if they rely blindly on the suggestions of your translation memory. Thank you, Mega. Thank you so much. Dr. Mohammed, I want to ask about the translation memory. Does the unit have to be a sentence? No, it doesn't have to be a sentence. It could be a sentence. It could be a heading for a section. It could be a cell in a table or a whole paragraph. Again, it depends on the language. For example, in Arabic, we tend to write longer paragraphs. But in English, they prefer and they tend to write shorter sentences. Sometimes we have a whole page in Arabic, which includes only one sentence. It is only one sentence. I mean, by sentence, what I mean is that it starts and ends with a full stop. In Arabic, we can have one page sentence. Is the CAD tools, or is the CAD tool, well, translated text? Well, there was a call for papers to investigate this. It would be helpful for literary translators in certain occasions. When you work with a team of translators to translate a literary work, you have to agree on certain things, such as how to transliterate names, name of characters, name of places. Cool? So you don't basically translate and translate. In Arabic, we have different ways to transliterate one word. For example, Jacob. Jacob in English, we can translate it in Arabic as either Yaqub, for example, or Jacob. So we have different ways to translate it or translate the word, the proper name. So in this occasions, CAD tool would help you manage the translation and the transliteration. However, you don't have to rely on the reproduction of style, if you know what I mean. Mohammed has a question. Dr. Mohammed, have you mentioned two types of new machine translation, the rapid one and the other one? Sorry, did not get the second one. Yes, actually, I mentioned two types. The first one is paid machine translation, and the second one is the free machine translation. The paid machine translation is customizable. They can customize it based on your needs and based on your text. Yani, they can create a machine translation or a neural network machine translation system that can handle legal texts, and they will feed it with legal documents, legal terms, and it will learn the legal language and produce good legal translation. So it's different from the general neural network machine translation that is open for people to use publicly. Personally, I find CAD tools really useful to translation. Yes, maybe. It could be helpful for people to translate literary texts. Again, literary texts, they do need creativity and they do need maybe variation of writing the target text But again, it depends on the translator. It depends on the work that he's working on. It will be very helpful for you to translate maybe a play, just to maintain the formatting of the work, the way the play should be printed in the target language. And I forgot to mention that the CAT tool, or any CAT tool that would use, would replicate the style and the format. I mean, what I mean by style is the layout of the document. If you import a Word document in a specific format, in a specific layout, the exported file will maintain that layout, which is amazing. You don't have to work again on the layout or the formatting of your target document. Mustafa has a question earlier. It's not Mustafa, it's Karyadi. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm spelling your name correctly. How if the text translated previously using CAT tool are less satisfaction? Yes, actually, I mentioned this. Sometimes we unfortunately rely blindly on the suggestions provided by the translation memory. At this point, you have to double check and make sure that you are satisfied with the translation. Otherwise, you can edit the translation, and you can, that's suggested by the translation memory, and you can have your own new translation, and your own new machine translation, and your new translation will be saved in the translation memory for future projects. Giri has a question. When translating subtitles, usually there is a special software for it. Can SDL be combined with? Yes. Well, SDL, the new version of SDL provides subtitling functionalities where you'll be able to open the video in the software, and you will be able to subtitle the video inside the environment of SDL Studio. There are also other software to use to subtitle movies and videos, and I use in my class Aegisub. It's free and it's good. It does the task. You can basically Google it. It's Aegisub. I'm going to type it in the or show you the website. It's free and it's good, and I use it in my classes. This is the website. You can download it on your PC for free. You can take a screenshot, or you can just type it down. Thank you, Fauzi. Thank you. Feel free to pick up your mic and ask questions directly, or type in the chat box if you still, not sure about anything, or if you want to ask any questions about anything related to translation and technology. And I believe we're going to have another session sometime in December about localization, and that session will be more or less about software, computer games, and website localization.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. I would like to encourage my students to ask questions. There's still another question though in the chat.
Yes, again,
possible to use other translators' translation memory to improve our translation results.
Yes, well, actually, what happens usually when you work for a bigger translation company is that, for example, they usually provide translation services for different clients. For example, Apple works for with a specific translation provider. And the translation provider would create a translation memory for Apple products. When they hire a new translator to work on a specific project for Apple, they would send the new translator the translation memory and a term base specifically designed and used for Apple translations, products. So yes, you can use other translators' term bases and translation memories, and you can import them easily to your system, and you can make use of their content in your translation tasks. Well, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. There's another one. He said, or she said, I'm curious about how brochures or any text in pictures are translated. Does the translator give the translation results in documents such as MS Word or directly put it on the design?
Okay. We have to understand one important thing when we work on specific formats. Number one, in order to translate a brochure using a CAT tool, your brochure should be machine readable. It could be in any type of format, such as Word document, or it could be a PDF that is machine readable. What I mean by machine readable is that you can copy and paste the content of the PDF. And or you can have Photoshop files as your source document. And the CAT tool will be able to handle the content and the style and the formatting of the document or the brochure, and will be able to reproduce that in the target file when you export your project. Cool. Again, it depends, number one, on the file that you are working on the format of the file, and number two, on the abilities and the functions included in your translation tool. Some translation tools will not be able to open InDesign documents, for example. So you have to make sure that you use the translation tool that would be able to replicate the style and would be able to read the source file. But most of the CAT tools would be able to open a Word document that includes several formats and layouts, and would be able to reproduce that in the target exported file.
But do you think CAT tool can be used to translate pictures? I mean, the format is not pictures, isn't it? The CAT tools translate the text, right? The document.
Sometimes they use them to translate pictures and brochures. However, the file, again, should include text that can be accessed by the machine. Yani, if you have an image that is flattened, what I mean by flattened is that you cannot copy and paste the linguistic content of that image. In this context, you cannot translate that image and the content of that image into a target language. Let me show you an example of this. For example, this is a logo. And I think you can see it now. I can't copy and paste the content, right? I cannot access the content. I will not be able to translate this in a CAT tool. But if I have another example, let me see. For example, I have this, and I have this, and then I have a text box here that includes language. Let me show you.
It means that you can transfer the text into the pictures. That's what it means, right?
If my picture looks like this,
okay,
and I import this into my CAT tool, I'll be able to translate this simply because the text can be accessed and can be replaced by the CAT tool, by the target language. See? Again, this is the point. If you can access the text, then yes, you can. If no, unfortunately, you cannot translate it using a CAT tool. You have to do what we call OCR, or optical character recognition. You have to convert the text into a machine-readable text. Well, it needs a whole class of CAT tools in order to talk about these details.
Of course, yes. This is only introduction sessions, everybody. So if you wanted to learn more, you need to get into a class or training, right? How long do you think people need to learn to master CAT tools?
Well, number one, they have to master the way documents are produced. Then they have to master the way document can be manipulated. Because sometimes they have to manipulate documents, they have to play with the document and convert it in a certain format. After they master this, they can start learning CAT tools. Because sometimes, as you know, a CAT tool is a software that requires certain characteristics in the files to be able to handle it. And as a translator, you have to be able to tweak the file format a little bit in order to be able to use technology. So this is one or two things that you should learn before you start learning about CAT tools. CAT tools then would be easy to learn and to master maybe within a month or so if you keep practicing.
Okay, there's another question in the chat. If we rely too much on the CAT tools memory and health, will we become more lenient during post-editing process?
Okay, let me say something here. Translation memory has nothing to do with machine translation. Translation memory is your translation, your own translation, your own words. When you have a similar sentence, then your machine translation, your translation memory will show you your translation, and you will rely on your own translation. Again, don't rely blindly on what you previously produced, because sometimes we have stylistic differences or client needs. So you have to tweak the translation a little bit in certain occasions. In post-editing, again, sometimes you are provided with a customized machine translation that is that's going to work for the specific text that you were asked to translate. I don't know if I answered the question or is it still vague?
Well, but that answer, Husna?
Sorry, ma'am, my connection is really, really bad. I couldn't hear.
We're all having a very bad connection because of the rain. Oh my God.
Yeah, right. We are in the unfortunately. Sorry, Dr. Mohammed. What was that?
So you didn't hear anything that Muhammad said?
No, unfortunately, I'm so sad right now.
So what's in
Sorry,
short,
Muhammad.
Muhammad? Can you repeat? Sorry.
I will ask my friends. No worries.
No, I'm
But
fine.
thank you for answering though.
Well, again, I want you to know that machine translation is different from translation memory, and translation memory is your own translation. And I don't understand the how you are trying to link machine translation to translation memory here.
Yeah, Husna, post-editing process usually happen with machine translation, not with CAT tools.
Yes.
Because when we use CAT tools, we are able to control it, right?
Right.
Well, for machine translation, we cannot control the result. That's why there is post-editing process.
Oh, I got the whole
Yeah.
thing messed
So
up.
yeah,
Actually, because of the connection. Sorry.
Okay.
So my question would be, for the machine translation help, if you rely too much on machine translation, will it makes us more lenient? Actually, not for CAT tool then, but for machine translation.
I did not hear some parts of your question because of the internet.
But she's saying that if we use machine translation, does it mean that we become more lenient in the editing process? I don't know, right? It
I
depends
don't
on the person.
know. It depends, exactly. Depends on the person, it depends on the project, it depends on your own perception of the translation task. Some translators would never work as post editors, and they stated that out loud in several platforms online. So it depends on the translator and on the way he perceives the
If I think if the person is skillful enough, he or she will do the best that he or she can in the post editing process. But if the person has no skills, has no knowledge in the translation, then they will just believe in the results of the machine translation. And remember, machine translation is like Dr. Dan always said, is garbage in, garbage out. Remember that? I always remember that slogan. All right, another question is about machine translation. If full translation are requested to be done by machine translation, and then we as translators are asked to edit that, how much do you think is the fee should we charge? The fee if we use machine translation, and how much is the percentage of if we compare to manually done translation?
Okay, you have to understand one thing. It depends on the company's goal, whether they are seeking publishability quality, or they're seeking readability quality, or a higher level of quality. If they're seeking a publishability quality, they want to publish the target text in the target language with no grammatical errors, but they don't focus on style, then they usually charge $25 per hour as post editors.
$25 per hour.
Yes.
For the post editing process, you mean?
Right. So they usually charge per hour. Some companies would say, no, we're charging, or we want to charge per word, but again, you can't guarantee the output of the machine translation. So sometimes you spend more time because of the bad quality of the machine translation.
Right.
And you do less work. That's why they charge per hour.
And then compared to the manually done translation, which one is bigger, do you think? It should be the manual one, right?
What was the second part?
If we compare to the manually done translation.
Well, manual done translation is usually calculated per word.
Yeah.
So they charge from 7 cents to 14 cents, depending on the translator's qualifications and, of course, the text type, deadline, and so many other things.
But which one do you think is you can earn a bigger fee?
Money?
The post editing or the manual translation?
They say that post editing when you work as a post editor, you will be able to produce more content, translated content. So for example, if your average production is 3,000 words per day as translation from scratch, you'll be able to do 8,000 words per day if you do post editing, because you're not translating from scratch. They say that, I know the lower rates post editing is a problem. However, lower rates is compensated by the higher volumes of translations that you will be able to produce.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So in regular translation, you can translate 3,000 words and you charge maybe 7 cents per word that you will make. Let me calculate that. 3,000 by 0.07, that's about $200. And if you work as a post editor, you will do 8,000 words, and it would take you maybe 4 hours to do that. 4 by 2.5, that is, or no, you can do, well, it depends on your skill again, but you will end up with a little bit similar amount of money. Because the lower rate or the large volume compensates for the lower rate.
Okay, another question. Is post editing the same as proofreading and editing? And what are the key skills to post editing?
Yes, well, they are not the same. Key skills for post editors are different from those required by regular proofreading or editing. Number one, you have to be tolerant. You don't have to focus so much on the style. This is number one. If it's not broken, don't fix it. This is the rule in post editing. So if the sentence reads well, don't try to change in the structure at all. Just it's good. Boom, I'm fine. I move on. Make sure that the terminology are used consistently. Make sure that it reads well. Don't change may into might, for example. So it's basically in editing, in regular editing, we focus on style and we focus on wording. In machine translation, post editing, we don't focus that much on these issues. Again, the post editing certificate by SDL Trados, the whole PDF provides valuable information on how to develop yourself and what to focus on when you want to produce a post edited version of certain texts.
Okay, we have questions from Pak Toto. Have you met Pak Toto? Pak Toto, can you show yourself? Pak Toto is the head of the linguistic departments of our.
Oh, hello.
Hello, Pak Toto, where are you?
Hello,
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's nice to meet you, Dr.
nice to-
Batineh.
Yeah, Pak Toto, do you want to ask the question directly or do you want me to read the question in the chat?
Please, you can read the.
Okay.
Thank you very
So,
much.
yeah, so the question from Pak Toto is that if a CAT tool implemented neural networks, how is it different from a machine translation?
Well, a neural network is machine translation. In the same way that we say a taxi is a vehicle and a Lamborghini is also a vehicle. The regular cab is the traditional machine translation approach, while the Lamborghini is the new approach, which is neural networks. So both are used to produce translation from one language into another. However, neural machine translation is more advanced, and it learns the language in a more advanced manner, and would produce also fluent translation compared to regular machine translation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That
Yeah.
was an interesting question.
His internet is also unstable, he said.
Yes.
Okay. There's another question. I use free CAT tools mostly in translating legal documents. I'm always wondering what is the significant difference between the free and paid CAT tools. Is the paid ones worth the price?
Well, as long as you don't have a problem with the free ones, then this is great. Paid platforms or paid CAT tools are usually used for several reasons. Number one, when the company wants to connect your work to their server, so they have to have specific capabilities that are provided for paid licenses. This is number one. Number two, they usually require you to translate using a paid translation tool if they ask you to handle or to translate a specific text type that would be impossible for the free ones to handle. For example, you cannot translate a software using MemSource. You have to have a paid CAT tool that would help you handle this kind of projects. So if the free one does the task, then you're great. I mean, you have to be thankful for that. You don't have to get the paid ones.
Yeah. So it depends on what we need, right?
Exactly. Depends on what you need. Depends on your client's needs. Again, sometimes the translation company asks you to use SDL Trados to execute a specific project.
Yeah.
And in these occasions, they provide you with a license, and they provide you with a limited time license. For example, the project would run for 2 months. They provide you with 2-month access to SDL Trados to do the task. You don't have to buy it. Yes, this is from my experience in the market, I mean.
Okay.
Mhm.
Another questions, which program is the most helpful, like SDL, WordFast, or there are different types of CAT tools, right? What do you think is the best one?
I feel comfortable with SDL Trados.
Is it user friendly?
It is user-friendly. It is a little bit complicated for beginners. It handles different file formats, but my best easy one to use for tasks on the go is MemSource. It is great, excellent, and it does the task. And I don't have to worry about saving my files on my desktop or renaming them because everything will be on the cloud. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
What else?
So, any other questions from the participants, especially from my students? Please ask questions. This is a very rare occasion. We don't have this every month.
Type of questions actually tell me about the people who ask them. I mean, they are very smart questions, very good questions to ask, and they would help you and help those who have never used the CAT tool to start thinking about CAT tools in a specific way.
Right. Yeah, but sometimes it also depends on the demand of your work.
Right.
In Indonesia, sometimes we don't actually need to use machine or CAT tools. The demand's not as high as in the United States or probably in Jordan, perhaps, you know. So
Right.
there are many translators who could still do their job manually. I mean, just using laptop, not using any technology, and that would be fine. But I know that, well, sooner or later we're going to
Things will
use,
change.
yeah, the technology somehow. It's
Of course, if I have a translation company, I would hire a translator who knows CAT tools. Like we
exactly,
have.
exactly. Yeah, the demand abroad, yes, it is like that. You know, I'm saying that in Indonesia is not that, you know, not so high demand on CAT tools, but I believe that the direction in the future will be that way. You know,
Right.
it's
Right.
inevitable. You know? The
Right.
progress, the technology, yeah, is inevitable. Okay, Hetty asked question. Could you recommend some user-friendly CAT tools for subtitling?
Okay. Again, CAT tools are used to translate documents. Subtitling tools are used to subtitle videos. So SDL Trados is the only CAT tool that combined, and I'm not sure about MemoQ, that combined audiovisual translation in their translation environment tool. I mean, SDL provides this, MemoQ, I'm not sure, but you can use, and let me show you something. Well, I'm going to show you two things actually. The first one is EduSub, which I showed you a minute ago. This tool is very good to handle subtitles. And the other thing is Amara.
Amara.
Amara, it is a platform where you can download, where you can subtitle videos online. And the videos are basically YouTube videos.
So it's an online.
Yes, it's an online one, yes. And it's open for everybody to participate. For example, this video, how to vote in Georgia, it was added by people to translate it into different languages. The completed subtitles are in Arabic, English, Spanish, French, Russian, Croatian. If you want to add Indonesian, you click add subtitle. And then
So it's like a crowdsources then.
Yes, exactly. So you can practice subtitling there. You add Indonesian, and it open the subtitle for you here. You'll be able to see the English, see, and then you start providing your subtitles. And once you're done, you save your draft, and people, Indonesian people in the States will be able to watch it with Indonesian subtitles. So it's good to start learning certain skills by joining free and volunteer platforms that would help you so much. And you can, of course, include that in your CV that you worked as a volunteer and you provided translation or subtitling for X video, and you can provide the link that would help you grow as a translator and a subtitler in the future.
But who
So
will
again,
supervise the results, Mohammed?
there will be so many people taking part in the project. There will be people who will revise it, those who have like higher ranks on the website. So we have volunteers, we have supervisors, and we have editors.
Okay.
Again, always volunteer translation is not always the best, but it is at least a way to provide subtitles to audiovisual material that would help people in specific locales learn things in that language.
Yeah, exactly. It works like a crowdsources, and everybody improves other people's works, right?
So,
Supervising each other's.
Exactly. The first step is to translate, then syncing and timing to make sure that it syncs with the video, and the last step is review and complete. After that, the video will have the subtitles in the target language.
Okay. All right. We still have like 3 more minutes, maybe 1 more questions. Anyone who'd like to ask any questions? No? Okay, then, if there is no more questions, please give a virtual applause to Dr. Mohammed Batineh. I don't think we can hear anybody's applause. Thank you so much for very interesting public lecture, and thank you for the answers to all the questions. I think it's very clear, and of course that within 2 hours we can only learn the introductions of what CAT tools and machine translation is. So everybody would like to know further, you need to join training on CAT tools and also machine translation, right? Interesting thing is about that we should not have a negative opinion or stigma about machine translation. I still do have the negative opinion about it because of a lot of weaknesses shown by machine translation. But yeah, I'm sure if we can improve it, that will be better in the future to help the translator, the human translators. I mean, but still, I believe human translators still are, required to do the post-editing results, right?
Right.
We will not be replaceable by those machines, right?
No, we will work
as long as we always improve our own skills, yeah, brushed on our own knowledge, yeah, and we will not be replaceable. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Mohammed Batineh. I hope that we will have another. We are going to have another chance on the 9th December, right? On localization. We will spread the flyer as soon as possible. Hopefully, in the future, in the following semester, we might have other sessions. Maybe not just public lecture, maybe like a workshop or something like that. Yeah, the cooperation between Yarmouk University and Universitas Indonesia. Okay, then. So thank you again on behalf of the committee. Is Pak Toto still here? Mbak Kiki, are you still here? You remember Mbak Kiki, right?
Yes.
Hi.
That's the one. Okay.
Good to see you.
Nice to meet you again.
Thank you so much. It's always nice to see you and to hear your voice.
Okay, so that's all for today, everybody. For all the participants, thank you very much for listening and asking questions. And if we have another program, we'll let you know as soon as possible. Okay, so good day, everybody. Bye.
Well, thank you
Muhammad,
so much for
Thank
the
I'll see you again later. Bye
you.
bye.
Thank you.